Smaller manufacturers bring some welcome variety to the automotive landscape. Unable to compete with the big players, they find their niches and fill them often in creative ways. Not only does the S-Cross need to live up to its maker's name, but it also carries the burden of helping the brand to secure a bigger slice of the family SUV market at a time when it's never been more closely followed. After all, the S-Cross is diving headfirst into competition with such talented rivals as the Nissan Qashqai, the Peugeot 3008, the Ford Puma, and of course the brand new Toyota Corolla Cross. To help it take down those formidable foes, Suzuki has equipped every S-Cross with a 1.4-liter turbocharged petrol engine with a 48-volt mild hybrid assistance for a little extra power and efficiency. The system looks after itself, so you never have to plug in or to charge. But it won't power the car on electricity alone as a plug-in or a full hybrid can. Entry-level Comfort trim gives you front-wheel drive, while Top Comfort Plus spec comes with Allgrip 4-wheel drive. You will have to look elsewhere if you want a diesel engine, but a full hybrid version of the S-Cross will be coming soon. Let's take a closer look. On the outside, the new S-Cross may look dramatically different from before, but save for the more modern infotainment system and a little bit of rubberized material on the dashboard, the interior looks largely as it did in the old model. Taking a seat in the Suzuki S-Cross, you will instantly notice that the layout is simple, with the infotainment screen nice and high on the dashboard and physical controls for the dual-zone air conditioning positioned lower down. Comfort Plus models with 4-wheel drive also have a dial to change driving modes, normal, sport and snow, conveniently placed next to the handbrake. The pedals line up nicely with the driver's seat. The steering wheel adjusts for reach and rake, and every model provides driver's seat height adjustment and a center armrest. The backrest is adjusted using a lever and can provide such precise adjustment as the wheels provided in many rivals. Electric seat adjustment isn't available. Comfort Plus trim's part leather seats are comfortable, but it's a shame they don't offer more side support, and that adjustable lumbar support adjustment isn't available. The S-Cross tall, wide windscreen and slim front pillars make seeing forwards over the bonnet easy. The generous front side window helps you see out at junctions and roundabouts too. The infotainment systems on recent Suzukis have been pretty dire, neither very capable or future-rich, nor very simple to use. The new S-Cross has a completely new system that is still far from brilliant. It's not the quickest to respond and looks a little sparse and simplistic. However, the built-in functions are actually quite logical to operate, and the navigation is better than on some much more expensive cars, with clear directions and an easy way to select alternative routes. And as you would expect in any modern car, there is Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, and both are wireless as standard. Unfortunately, there is no option of a wireless charger, so you will have to plug in your device to stop it from dying on a long trip. Even wired charging ports are less than abundant, with just one USB-A port and one 12-volt inside the armrest box. The S-Cross entry-level Comfort trim comes with a 7-inch touchscreen infotainment system, while Comfort Plus upgrades the screen to 9-inch. Both systems include DAB radio and of course Bluetooth. Built-in sat-nav is only available with the high trim. The 9-inch screen is crisp and shows information clearly. However, while the graphics are good, the delay between your inputs and the system reaction seldom easy. It gets frustrating when you need to find a location or simply change menus. The system is almost entirely touch controlled, with a few touch sensitive shortcut buttons at the bottom of the screen. That makes operating it on the move much more distracting than if there were more physical controls. While the S-Cross dash layout is easy to use and a few switches are nicely damped, it's a very plain and drab looking cabin. There are lots of scratchy, brittle feeling materials even in areas that you touch a lot. Top spec Comfort Plus trim does help to improve the feeling of quality by replacing the standard cloth seats with part leather ones, but is still a long way short of other competitors. Everything is well put together at least. The seats are decent enough. You sit high with a commanding driving position that will be comfortable for most people thanks to plenty of adjustment in the steering column and seat. There is no adjustable lumbar support, but that didn't pose an issue for most of testers, even of long drives. Adults on the back seat will have reasonable legroom as the S-Cross is slightly more generously spacious here than even a Nissan Qashqai, but headroom is tight with a panoramic sunroof that comes as standard on Comfort Plus models. The backrest is adjustable, but the difference is so slight that is barely apparent in the photos. The rear seat environment of the S-Cross also feels very barren. There are no ventilation openings and no USB ports, which is quite a major omission in a family car in 2022. The boot is also adequate, but no more. It's smaller than the Qashqai's and other than a movable boot floor, and the 12-volt power port has no special feature like hooks or dividers. The back seats in the S-Cross are set higher than the front ones, so headroom is rather limited. It's worse with the Comfort Plus panoramic roof, and anyone approaching 6 feet tall will find their head touching the roof line. Fortunately, legroom is much more generous as is shoulder room, so it's no problem for 2 adults to sit comfortably. 3 passengers side by side will find it squeezy. And the S-Cross has a pronounced floor hump for the middle passenger to straddle. If you regularly carry a full load of rear seat passengers, you might want to look at the more spacious Skoda Karoq. Storage-wise, each rear door has a space for a large bottle of water. Otherwise, the only other space to store things is in the handy map pocket that's on the back of the front passenger seat. When you don't have a middle seat passenger, an armrest with 2 cup holders can be folded down out of the middle seat. The rear seat backs split in a 60-40 configuration, and you can fold them down by pushing buttons next to the head restraints. This can be done quite easily with one hand because the seat backs aren't particularly heavy or stiff. You can recline the rear seat backs slightly for a more laid-back sitting position. Its 430-liter volume is more than enough to swallow a large shopping session, and the wide boot opening makes loading items a double. To make loading large items easier, the adjustable boot floor can be raised so that it lines up with the boot lip, and when the backs of the rear seats are folded down, makes the whole area flat. The boot is square in shape with a deep cubbyhole on either side. There is also a removable luggage cover to keep valuables out of sight and various hooks for tying things down. The whole Suzuki fleet got a mechanical overhaul last year, with most models becoming hybrids. They are only mild hybrids, but at least in the case of the S-Cross, Suzuki does use a 48-volt system, so the starter generator can add some meaningful power to the crankshaft under initial acceleration, unlike the cheaper 12-volt systems found in cars like the Nissan Qashqai. A full hybrid version is reportedly in development. As such, the only engine available in the S-Cross is the 1.4-liter boosted turbocharged 4-cylinder with 127 horsepower and 235 Nm of torque. The integrated starter generator contributes up to 13 horsepower but does so at lower RPM, while the petrol engine is still building power to make the power delivery feel more immediate, rather than adding to peak power or torque. As before, there is a choice of either a 6-speed manual or a 6-speed automatic gearbox. The automatic is a torque converter unit rather than a dual clutch transmission as one might expect in a car like this. Our time in an automatic version suggests that around 5 liters per 100 kilometers will be easily achievable, and the manual should do a little bit better. Few people will buy a family-friendly, value-segment crossover hatchback for its handling performance. Yet a lot of rivals come with a remarkably stiff suspension setup, ending up with neither convincing ride comfort nor particularly engaging handling. The Suzuki S-Cross bucks that trend with surprisingly supple suspension. The suspension setup on the S-Cross is on the soft ride, so there is a fair amount of pitch and lean when cornering or driving on undulating roads. The upside of that softness is that the ride is generally quite comfortable, because it's good at smoothing out the worst of the bumps and ruts around town and settles nicely on a motorway. Expansion joints can send a heavy thump and shiver through the car at speed, and there's quite a bit of noise from the suspension too. Overall, the S-Cross is a comfortable enough family car, but not quite a match for the Nissan Qashqai. As expected, with the soft suspension, there is plenty of body roll for a modern car, but that does allow the chassis to remain largely unperturbed by bumpy roads. Ultimately, it's reasonably well damped and doesn't get floaty, so it's no real cause for complaint. Sadly, handling is nothing to write home about. Road holding is adequate at best, and the steering can be disconcertingly light and mute. When you row the car along a bit harder, the steering does weight up, but there is no hidden dynamic allure to be found here. One of the S-Cross distinguishing features is its Allgrip 4-wheel drive. Suzuki is proud of the fact that it's offering 4-wheel drive in combination with both manual and automatic gearboxes. Indeed, all-wheel drive is a rarity amongst similarly priced cars, and is usually only available with one transmission option. Suzuki projects that about 35% of S-Crosses will be specified with Allgrip, but it clearly won't be a necessity for most people. But if you live in an area that sees a decent amount of snow in the winter, or if you plan light off-roading on unsealed tracks or grass, it's good that Suzuki is offering a relatively affordable all-wheel drive car. On the road, you will be hard-pressed to feel the system working. This is still a predominantly front-driven car and doesn't have the power to encounter traction issues on normal asphalt. There is a selector button on the center console to switch between sport and automatic 4x4 modes, or to lock it in 4-wheel drive, but the difference between auto and sport is hard to detect. The Allgrip 4-wheel drive system will give you more security on loose or greasy surfaces. Its extra traction will also help when towed, but it doesn't make the car any more fun to drive. The automatic, meanwhile, is a fairly old-fashioned 6-speed converter and slashes through the gears inoffensively and tends to keep the RPMs a touch too high for at most cruising comfort. But that's still preferable to a lot of modern autos' tendency to shift early and make the engine poke down. There are shift paddles, but there is little need for them. What is quite annoying is that the old school lever, aside from being unpleasant to hold, is easy to accidentally knock into manual mode. Not a bugbear if you choose the better manual version. The brakes are only adequate. Pedal progression in normal driving is excellent and always inspires confidence, but the ultimate stopping distances during testing were lagging slightly behind rivals. The S-Cross is a little uninspiring to drive in comparison with the Seat Ateca and other family SUVs that have raised the bar for handling. That's not to say it's bad, though its light steering makes easy work of low-speed maneuvers and it feels stable on a motorway. What it lacks is a feeling of being involved in the process of driving, and there's very little sense of connections through the steering. It also begins to lose front-end grip and gradually works wide in corners at lower speeds than the Ateca and other rivals. The other effect of the compliant suspension is that the S-Cross is one of the best riding cars you can buy at this price point. As well as soft springs, all S-Crosses come on 17-inch alloy wheels. At low speed, some sharp road imperfections can be felt, but once you pick up this pace, the S-Cross glides along very serenely. That's true as far as ride compliance goes. The S-Cross is a value segment family car, of course, and one of the areas where you notice this is with some intrusive road noise. It's particularly apparent on the motorway. It's certainly not engine noise that's the issue here. The S-Cross is fairly long geared and cruises at 2,300 rpm at 110 km per hour in top gear, but there is a considerable road noise while it does so, and a little bit more wind noise than in more expensive competitors. This is borne out of our measurements, which show that the S-Cross is a few decibels above the Nissan Qashqai at any speed. As you pull away in the S-Cross, you will hear a bit of rasp from the 1.4-liter turbocharged engine, but that quickly fades into the background as you get up to speed and it remains quiet once settled. It's a different story if you rev it hard, it gets very boomy and coarse. Thankfully, because of how its power is developed at lowest revs, there is a little call to push the engine hard, so most of the time the S-Cross is hushed. The mild hybrid system also helps to reduce vibration and noise. Unfortunately, there is quite a lot of tire and wind noise at motorway speeds, so generally the S-Cross is still some way behind the T-Roc and others for offering a peaceful drive. At 29,300, the Comfort Basic trim has most of what you might need, with LED headlights, a 7-inch infotainment screen with wireless Android Auto and Apple CarPlay, dual-zone climate control, heated seats, keyless entry, adaptive cruise, and full set of active safety features. For €6,700 extra, the Comfort Plus adds all-wheel drive, a 360-degree camera, part leather seats, a panoramic sunroof, and a 9-inch center screen with navigation. To get a similar level of equipment to motion trim on a Nissan Qashqai, you have to go for one of the top specs, which are over 37,000. The gap closes when comparing an automatic Comfort Plus, which is always 4-wheel drive. The Suzuki S-Cross may fall short of many rivals with its handling and interior quality, but then it's also a good deal cheaper than most. The model range is exceedingly simple. There is only one engine, although a full hybrid version is on the way, and you choose between two triples, comfort plus other than fancier paint and automatic gearbox. Are no separate options. The Suzuki S-Cross is not the best family-size crossover hatchback you can find. In fact, it lags behind rivals in most of the ways that will give you a good first impression of the car. The interior is conspicuously cheap and adequate, and it doesn't offer much in the way of connectivity. The car is not particularly engaging to drive, and even the space and offer is only worth qualified praise. However, when you live with the car for a while, you start to see how why people are very satisfied with Suzuki ownership and keep coming back to the brand. Everything you need is provided, and that provision even extends to a comfortable and unpretentious ride. The S-Cross manages to combine relatively petty performance and good drivability with very creditable economy and a low purchase price, so it covers the basics rather well. Suzuki also claims its big strength is its dealer network. The trust its customers have in the brand and the car's reliability. Reliability surveys, such as TÜV and DEKRA here in Germany, are quite happy with Suzuki products. In other words, there is every chance an S-Cross will be largely painless to own.